There was an article today in the Washington Post which quoted a young woman who was asked about this election, and basically her answer was, well, I only vote in the presidential elections. Well, that's just not enough anymore. When you think about all the damage that can be done in a state.
What state could she be talking about? That's former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton stumping for Democratic candidate for Virginia's governor, that's Terry McAuliffe. He's running against Republican State Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli, who, as you guys know, I like to call the Cooch. At this point, McAuliffe is up by 8 points. McAuliffe's first big lead actually came in late August. Now, remember, Virginia is a key battleground state, and wouldn't you know it, around the same time we saw Terry's numbers improving, the Virginia State Board of Elections sent a proposed purge list of about 57,000 voters to city and county registrars. Purge meaning wipe off the books and strip them of their votes. Now, funny thing, it didn't take long for a number of these local officials to find high error rates in the board's list purge and board's lists. Now, you'd think that'd be raising red flags for both candidates, but who happens to be the board's chief legal advisor? You guessed it, none other than the state's attorney general, the Cooch, which is in part of the reason why so many thought he actually should have stepped down before running for governor. Now, speaking a little legalese, it is all circumstantial, but it is convenient, isn't it, that just around the same time McAuliffe began running away with the race, the Cooch's State Board of Elections decided there were issues with tens of thousands of voter registrations. On October 3rd, the Virginia Democratic Party actually filed an injunction to stop these voters from being denied the chance to vote. And this week, despite that lawsuit, the Republican-led election board revealed actually that it had already purged over 38,000 voters from the rolls. But hey, that's a relatively small number, a pittance, right? Cost of doing business. That's actually what Cuccinelli's office said in its court filing. On Friday, a federal judge rejected the Virginia Democratic Party's suit and said they, quote, didn't find any strong showing of any inequitable treatment or deprivation of anyone's rights. I'm sure those tens of thousands of potential Virginia voters agree. Now, Ken Cuccinelli's campaign is in trouble. His messaging to women isn't working. He's actually been repelling them. His attempts to turn the clock back 50 years on women's reproductive rights has him losing female voters by 20 points. And the federal shutdown started by his good buddy Ted Cruz is hurting him in a state with 140,000 federal workers. So, like so many other Republicans from Pennsylvania to North Carolina, Texas to Florida, what's a Republican candidate left to do to try to even the playing field? Cheat. Let's bring in our guests, Reed Wilson, a senior political policy blogger for The Washington Post, and Judith Browne Dianis, who is co-director of the Advancement Project. Thanks to you both for joining me.
Hey, Karen.
So, Reed, I want to start with you and talk a little bit about Virginia and the state of the race in Virginia. I mean, it's obviously been a close race for some time, and then you do see Terry kind of McAuliffe breaking away to some degree, and he certainly seems to be doing better among African-American voters and female voters.
Yeah, that was the goal of the McAuliffe campaign the whole time, is to sort of rebuild the Obama coalition that has enabled President Obama to win Virginia twice. You know, Virginia's clearly changing, and it's changing in the northern suburbs. It's changing around Richmond. It's even changing down in the southeast part of the state. And because of that, it's suddenly a battleground state. But for the longest time, since I think it's 1977, the Virginia governor's race, which always comes the year after the presidential race, has actually gone to the party that doesn't control the White House. It's sort of a little year after sort of a reverse of voters get a chance to register some disapproval with the new president or whoever's in office. Yeah. This time, though, if McAuliffe wins, he would break that trend, which is interesting. I've always seen this race as like the lesser of two evils. The candidate that we're talking about on Election Day is the one who's going to lose, because both of these guys are just so very unpopular.
Well, but here, the thing that's interesting, as you mentioned, the Virginia governor's race kind of comes sort of in an off year, but as I recall, in 2010, you had when Chris Christie won in New Jersey, and then you had the race in another Republican victory in Virginia. They started to use that as a kind of a talking point for some momentum. So I wonder if, in part, you know, we just had Cory Booker elected in New Jersey. Maybe if we have some good luck, Democrats have good luck in Virginia. I'm just saying.
I would caution against using either of these elections in New Jersey, where Chris Christie's going to run away with this by 20 or 30 points, and Virginia, where it looks like McAuliffe is going to win. Even Cory Booker in a special election. I mean, these are data points that don't matter for anything in 2014. The bottom line is, as you have probably said 10,000 times, a week is a lifetime in politics. Well, hey, we got a year to go until 2014. So don't read too much into these results.
Oh, Reed, come on. You know that's what we like to do. Now, Judith, it was sort of interesting. Cuccinelli, in his weekly GOP address, he took aim at Obamacare, and there was a line that I found particularly interesting in the context of the voting rights that we're talking about. He said, quote, "I'll never stand by and watch as our hard-fought freedoms are taken away. We can do better." Okay.
Except for this one.
Exactly. So how about those 38,000 people?
That's right. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, of course, these last-minute voter purges always raises an eyebrow. We saw that in Florida in 2012. There's a history of getting these purges wrong, and that's why under federal law, actually, there's a blackout period. There's a 90 days before a federal election. You can't engage in this. And why? Because we know that it can be manipulated for one party to win. And, we have to have free, fair, and accessible elections, and this undermines the confidence of voters, creates confusion.
Right.
And, Virginia, here we go. It's a tight race. Let's do something to shake it up a little bit.
Yeah, it just seems so far too familiar. I want to move quickly to a couple of other states, because this is not the only place where we're seeing this, actually. Right. In Arizona and Kansas, you've got something I had not even ever heard of, this new strategy of two-tiered voting systems, where the rules for the federal voting is going to be different for the rules for the state and local voting. It seems like it's all a very confused mess for voters. And in Texas, where we have a big governor's race and we happen to have a female running, the Democrat, we see disenfranchisement in the form of making it harder for women to vote. Talk a little bit about that, Judith.
Sure. I mean, Texas, the voter ID law, and this is really in every state that has passed a voter ID law, it makes it harder to vote for women who have gotten married. Myself, for example, added the last name of Dianis, and, changing your ID, you have to be able to change your ID before you can vote. And so we know there will be a lot of women who will be impacted in that. In Arizona and Kansas, what they've done is they've decided, you know what, we don't like the federal law. This is so much like health care in this country, right? Like Obamacare. We didn't like Obamacare, so we're going to get around it. Well, that's what they're trying to do because they don't like federal voting laws. And so now they've decided, you know what, we will have two sets of rules, one for the federal elections and one for the state elections, and two bad voters. We don't care. We're going to disenfranchise you if we can.
All right. Well, we will be keeping an eye on all of it. Thanks to Reed Wilson and Judith Browne Dianis.
Thank you.